on the left. Tell me a little bit about this deck.
So David McDarby, we've seen Veteran Explorer sacrifice for value, do a bunch of things with my mana decks before, most notably the deck nicknamed Nickfit. David has decided to cut the Ifbif Ifrits and Grave Titans for Jace the Mind Sculptor and Liliana the Veil. General upgrade in card quality there. He also has a Nicol Bolas and a Karn Liberated and Gitaxian Probe plus Cabal Therapy, plus a Punishing Fire package. So a lot of different things going on here, similar to his standard deck from yesterday that fell a little bit short of the elimination rounds. And he leads off play here with a Gitaxian Probe.
Yep, Gitaxian Probe. Looks like it reveals Omniscience, Quicken, Ponder. That is a Judge Show and Tell there on the left, as well as Island and Ancient Tomb. Paying 2 life for the Gitaxian Probe. We'll see if he has the 2-card combo alongside Cabal Therapy or if he just wants to lead with a Veteran Explorer. Looks like he's going to play Grove of the Burn Willows, and there is the Veteran Explorer right there. Let's bring up the Veteran Explorer for those of you who are unfamiliar with Nick Fit and with the card Veteran Explorer. It's part of a cycle from Weatherlight. This is the most played of the versions. You don't typically see Noble Benefactor seeing play in Legacy. When it's put into a graveyard for play, each player searches their library for up to 2 basic land cards and put them into play untapped, is the important part of that.
And what Veteran Explorer tries to do is capitalize on the fact that many decks in Legacy are built with very few, or in some cases, 0 basic lands.
Yes.
So what you're able to do is go get your own basics. Usually you want to play with sacrifice for value effects, most notably Cabal Therapy, and grind your opponent out with large mana spells. That's the core of most Veteran Explorer decks. We most often see it in green-black lists that are ramping up into value creatures, but David is eschewing that and going for large planeswalkers instead.
David's first 2 land drops are Grove of the Burn Willows, Underground Sea, sticking true to his 5-color roots, although his current deck is only 4, not playing white. He gets in for 1 damage with Veteran Explorer. Meanwhile, Tyler Wilkerson went with a turn 1 Ponder and is now going for a turn 2 Show and Tell. Both players deciding what they want to go for here. David McDarby puts in Baleful Strix to draw a card, and Tyler Wilkinson is going to bring in Omniscience. Omniscience allows you to cast any spell for free, and he's going to choose to cast Intuition for free to go get 3 copies of Enter the Infinite. David's going to choose which copy of Enter the Infinite he wants Tyler to have.
This has been a rough weekend for David McDarby so far on camera.
Yeah. His record off camera is X-1.
Right.
And his record on camera is currently O-X, and it's not looking too much better here as Omnitel is going off on turn 2.
And so how this kill works now is he's set the last card of his deck as Enter the Infinites, which has obviously quite a large casting cost. He can then Cunning Wish for Release the Ants, continue to cast it. This deck has some backdoor ways to win if something like Emrakul is the last card of your opponent's deck. There's other ways you can go about it, but usually that setup is good enough to beat most opponents, and we see Tyler take down a blistering fast game 1.
Yep, that was pretty quick. That was exactly according to plan for the Omnitel deck. He even top-decked the Force of Will to have the backup if he so chose and so needed. That game goes a lot differently if David happens to have a Cabal Therapy on the play, but after sideboard, do things get any better for David McDarby?
David gets to bring in some real cards here. He has 3 copies of Thoughtseize. He has 2 copies of Red Elemental Blast. He has additional permission in Swan Song if he wants it. 2 copies of Surgical Extraction and 2 copies of Slaughter Game. So he has some reasonable utility and a Singleton Golgari Charm.
Yeah, Golgari Charm being able to take out the Omniscience mid-combo. He still gets to, his opponent gets to draw their deck and gets a lot of Force of Wills out of that afterwards. But with the Enter the Infinite on the stack, he's able to kill the Omniscience.
Yeah, it's tough to bring in those reactive cards because you basically have to have 2 mana up on the spot when it happens. But certainly the Red Blast and the Thoughtseizes are really easy additions.
Absolutely. Meanwhile, for Tyler Wilkerson, much of his sideboard is dedicated to the Cunning Wish package, of which he has 4 of in the main deck. He does have 4 Leyline of Sanctity in the sideboard, which if he sees Veteran Explorer, he can pretty much expect there to be Cabal Therapies shortly thereafter. So I would think that those would probably come in. The only other 2 cards that aren't part of the Cunning Wish package are Defense Grids, which I would not anticipate he bring in for David McDarby. The rest of the sideboard is to be able to wish for. He's got an Intuition, Trick Bind, Echoing Truth, Noxious Revival, Pact of Negation, Wipe Away, Firemind's Foresight, Slaughter Pact, and Release the Ants, which is the win condition of the deck. It was sort of stumbled upon. There were lots of different versions of what do we kill with once we draw our library with Omniscience, Enter the Infinite. And there were Laboratory Maniac versions, and there were other various types of versions with different wish packages for different types of things. I forget exactly who stumbled upon the Release the Ants kill, but it is quite a clean version to be able to kill your opponent with.
Yeah, Laboratory Maniac has some issues against multiple pieces of creature removal and response and things of that nature. Also being able to keep the combo entirely in your sideboard is valuable against discard spells as well.
Yeah,
so.
being entirely self-contained within just the one card, really.
Right. And Cunning Wish you want to play anyway, so you don't have to play an otherwise dead Laboratory Maniac as a kill. So there's a lot of upside to just keeping it all as part of your sideboard.
So David McDarby's deck is quite interesting. We mentioned the 4 Jace, and we mentioned the 3 Liliana. Those are really good spells. He does have 2 other Planeswalkers in his deck that you don't typically see in Legacy. He has a copy of Karn Liberated, which sometimes you see in Cloud Post lists. And then he has a copy of Nicol Bolas Planeswalker.
It's really good once it's in play.
Yes. That's a good way to say that it's an expensive spell. Yes. And unfortunately, he cannot show and tell or use his opponent's show and tells to put any of his Planeswalkers into play because it was printed before Planeswalker was an archetype.
It was not
a card type.
The template is not forward compatible.
Right. Whereas Eureka and Hypergenesis both are, I believe. And so, should he, if he so chose, he could have gone that path. But yeah, show and tell only puts in artifacts, creatures, lands, or enchantments. That does not include Nicol Bolas Planeswalker.
And part of the problem for David in this matchup, outside of the raw speed and power of Tyler's deck, is that David has quite a few dead cards. He has Innocent Blood and Punishing Fire and Pernicious Deed. These are all dead or very close to it. So.
Yeah, Deed for 10 to kill an Omniscience seems unlikely, as does Deed for 15 to clear out an Emrakul. And so he'll be able to bring in Thoughtseize, Golgari Charm, and all the other cards that we mentioned. David McDarby's going to lead off with Cabal Therapy, a naked therapy. What do you name first?
Brainstorm, probably.
He does not find a Brainstorm. He instead finds...
Well, I don't know if he named Brainstorm. This is just what I would name.
He finds Preordain, Cunning Wish, Force of Will, Omniscience, Ponder, and a second copy of Preordain alongside that island. And David McDarby did indeed name Brainstorm.
So I believe David has a Veteran Explorer in his hand, but no green mana.
So once he's able to hit the green mana, he'll be able to start clicking on all cylinders here.
Flashing back at Therapy. Part of the problem in this matchup really is that Tyler's deck actually can make use of Veteran Explorer symmetry. He has a lot of basics and a lot of needs for mana to string together cantrips and going off in one turn. So David can't just willy-nilly sack his Veteran Explorer to start doing his thing. He has to be conscious of Tyler being able to use that mana to good effect.
Yeah, having that mana in play, even if you're able to get a Liliana or a Jace off of it, is really dangerous because, you can make Tyler discard a card, you can Fate Seal him, you can Brainstorm, but what are you really accomplishing by doing that rather than ramping your Omnitel opponent to mana?
Right.
And so Tyler does use a turn 1 Ponder, decides to keep what he found on top. There's an Underground Sea. Number 2 does not have the green mana.
And we might be looking at a kill right now. 2 mana
That's
land.
Right. And there's another Show and Tell.
David thumbing through a hand with 2 Veteran Explorers, a Surgical Extraction, and a Liliana of the Veil. So
and there is Omniscience. And Veteran Explorer is able to enter the battlefield despite no green mana.
And Cunning Wish is essentially a kill here, as Cunning Wish can go get Intuition, Intuition go get Enter the Infinites, Enter the Infinites gets his whole deck, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
right, we weren't able to see the actual kill because David knew that the writing was on the wall, and so Tyler Wilkerson, with 1 loss in this tournament, 1 loss in yesterday's tournament, still keeping up his really, really blistering pace, able to defeat David McDarby here, 2-0. David McDarby's 3rd loss on camera this weekend, not his weekend to be under the bright lights.
This is the 2nd straight weekend where deep into the Legacy tournament, it looks as though Jerry Thompson's back-to-back Open weekend championships could be at risk. Owen made a reasonably deep run in the Legacy tournament last weekend before falling late in the Swiss rounds. And Tyler Wilkerson here is setting himself up for a top 8 berth.
Yeah, absolutely. He's in good shape to get there, as we have a 9-round tournament and he moves to 6-1. So he will likely have almost a win in next round.
All right, so we'll be